Okay, so welcome back. I think what I want to do now is think about actually how we can scrape or parse some of the podcasts from various feeds that exist online. So if we look at TalkPython to me here and just click on Show Details, we can see that each podcast is actually backed by like a feed URL. You can see this as the RSS endpoint here. If we go into a browser and open this, we can just see this as just an XML document, which represents a feed. So every feed has like a channel, item, title, and description. And then it has a bunch of items here, which is a list that you just append to when you release new content. So you can see the most recent one is first. Your application you would order here, I guess, by the pub date. And essentially what every podcast app is doing is just passing a bunch of these feeds. So subscribing to these feeds and periodically checking each feed that you're subscribed to if new episodes are available. So let's think about how we can kind of ingest this data into our Django app and get it to appear in here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by writing a parser, and then we're going to change the models as appropriate to include some of these new fields. So first of all, find something to actually fetch the data from the web. And I like to use this URL lib free library. So let's install that. Yep, it's already cached because I installed it before. And let's pop a shell, and let's just copy this this example here. We're going to do a GET request. And instead of their example, we're going to do TalkPython. Remember to include the RSS. We can see here that the status is 200, which is good, and we have data available to us, which is what is this? Just a bunch of bytes. Cool. So I know Python, the standard library, has an XML library thing for us. Here's an example. I guess they're passing from a file, et.parse. We have a string, so I guess this will work. So we can copy this and then do root equals et.from string. Yeah, and then resp.data root, and we can do what examples we have: root.tag, root.attrib, and we can say for child in root. Print child. You can see that the actual the root element only has one child, which is a channel, I guess. Yeah, so RSS is the root, and then channel has one thing, and we can probably loop over channel. So I know from my past experience that we can actually find elements. So we can do things like root.find channel, and maybe we can do find all item, and that will give me every single item. We can, I guess, look at the first and say find title. Yeah, and this is kind of like a nice API for working with XML, but it's kind of like query based. It's like the JavaScript document.get element by blah blah blah, and I find it's like not the easiest to work with because it's very I don't know, is it declarative? I just find it very clunky to work with, and based on previous experience, I much prefer to use this library called XML-to-dict. Which if we look on PyPI, maybe I have to actually get rid of the spaces here. XML-to-dict, yeah, this is just a library that you give it XML document, and it returns you a like nested Python dict, which I find is so much easier to work with. So we just go all the way back here, we import URL lib and say resp is this. It's going to take a while, and then do XML to dict, XML to dict dot parse, resp.data. We can probably say parsed. This gives us, you know, like a nice dictionary that we can start exploring. We can print the keys, so you can see we can look at the root, the channel, we can get the items, and let's get the first item live from PyCon 2023. It's the most recent episode. So yeah, XML to dict, I find this much easier than something like root.find .iter. Yeah, just a much nicer API. So I think we're going to use that, and I think the next step, it makes sense to perhaps lob some of this stuff into a test case and start building up our parser logic this way. It's often nice just to explore stuff in the REPL, but every time I exit the REPL, I've got to remember to import URL lib and then say this, and this takes some time. And every time I do this, I'm putting unnecessary load on this poor TalkPython RSS feed server, which I don't want to do. So I think for the time being, we can just we can take this file. Let's get a bunch of items here. Take a subset of this data and actually save it to disk, and then load it and parse it locally. So let's create a new folder. Let's just call this test data, and inside test data, let's add a new file and call this talkpython.rss. We open this. I'm going to paste the contents of that file and then just end the document like that. And then I think we can go into tests, so we can start actually building our parsing logic to test or to parse some of this XML. So we can say test parser, test case, def test parser, self. I'd already imported path earlier, so let's just use that. We can say with path, we're going to look in the current file, the parent slash test data talkpython.rss as f. Then maybe we can do .read bytes, and then self.assert is not none data, and then for the sake of sanity, let's print the data and then do test podcasts, and hopefully this will work. Okay, so yeah, there our data is there. That's pretty cool. Nice. So let's actually start writing some parsing logic, and for the time being I'm just going to stick it all in the same file. So let's say parse podcast data, and then say from, well, not from, let's just do import XML to dict. Let's say parsed data equals XML to dict parse data, and then we can say the RSS is going to be data.rss, channel is going to be RSS.channel, and let's just return an empty dict for the time being. Don't know why it keeps doing that. And let's just add a breakpoint here and see if those values are the same. So we have it's interesting. It's failing. Let's have a look. Assert is not none. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this should be is not none. Would help if my test actually did say the right thing. Okay, nice. I wonder why the breakpoint isn't actually being hit, because I'm not actually calling the code. So let's parse the podcast data and then say parsed podcast in here. So we should hit that breakpoint. Mismatch tag. Let's have a look in here. What have I missed? I've spelled channel wrong. See, this is why tests are important, folks. Data. What's wrong with data here? This should be parsed data. Let's just call this data actually. Let's just override it here. I know I'm shadowing that variable, but who cares? So we have data, and we have RSS, and we have a channel. And then inside channel, what have we got? We've got a bunch of keys. So each of these corresponds to. Go to the top of this page. Corresponds to one of these. So we have title, description, link, language. So I basically want most of this data, but I want it in like snake case Python. So I just want to parse all of this. I'm just going to do it by hand instead of trying to be fancy. Description, because there is logic further down the line that I imagine it might deviate. So let's keep it simple for the time being instead of trying to specialize just in case. Set a link, let's just say site link. Is this the site link? Let's have a look. Yeah, so that's actually the site where it's hosted. last build date, pub date we probably want. In fact, let's just get both. Channel.get pub date, copy paste, last build date, oh no, snake case, last build date, and then last build date. What else do we want? TTL, very important. Channel.get TTL. What else do we want? Subtitles, summary. These are all iTunes specific things, which I'm pretty sure we don't care about. The items we do care about, which we'll look at later. Let's just have a look here and see. Let's have a look at this atom link here. The atom link itself, we want the href for that to actually get the feed data itself. Is this the same episode as the RSS? Yes. So in here we want the site link, we want the feed link, we're going to do channel.get, the atom link, that doesn't return anything, we're just going to return empty dict. Then we want to get the href out of here, only if it exists. TTL should be fine for now, just as a string. Later we might want to convert it, and then I guess we want to return the items. So let's just check this doesn't blow up for the time being. Okay, that seems to be doing the right thing. Instead of printing the data, let's just print past podcast and do a sanity check that it has keys that we want. Yep, that all looks pretty good. I imagine at some point we will need to convert this to a valid date, and at some point we might want to convert this to a date time delta. But for the time being, let us soldier on and think about parsing some of these episodes. So let's have a parse episode section. Let's just add a breakpoint here so that when we get there we can poke about. And we're going to return a tuple here, so then we can say parse episode for, let's not call it episode, let's call it item. Let's say parse item, and then we can say we're going to return a list here, parse item for item in channel.get item. I don't know why it's not plural, but hey ho. So here we should be in the item section. So let's have a look at what keys each item has. It should be pretty similar actually, so we basically want something similar. We want titles, we want just a regular link. Does it have a description? It does have a description. GUID, I guess that would be another important thing. So let's say GUID. Pub date, another important thing. We already have that key down here, so maybe we can do something like this. What else? Title, link, GUID, category. We're going to ignore category for now, and it's got description. That all looks pretty good actually, so let's continue on. It's going to hit every single breakpoint, and then we can modify this test to say past podcast, past episodes. We want to assert both of those, not none, past episodes, self.assert equal past episodes. I think there's 3 or 4 in here, so let's double check. Channel is not defined. Excellent. That's because it's not channel, is it? It's data. So let's say data. Okay, so it turns out there was 4 episodes. So let's go to you, change you to 4, run the test again. Okay, so yeah, that seems to be working pretty well, and we have like our intermediate representation that we can then use to create our model data. Let's just poke around just to make sure one last time. So past podcast, so our podcast data, past episodes is all our past episode data. Okay, yeah, this looks good. I think this is a good place to draw a line, and then in the next episode what I think I will do is I'll take this data and I'm going to try and use it to then take this past podcast, and I want to be able to do something like, say, from model import podcast, from models import podcast, and ideally I'd like to be able to do something like this. So I'll be able to take the podcast and take this past podcast and be able to save that to the database. But as you can see right now, as podcast is getting a bunch of unexpected keyword arguments. That's because in the model, the only argument we have for podcast is title. So we'll need to go through in podcasts and potentially add all of these keys in the next episode. So I'll see you guys then.